And then obviously the edge rush class with Jalen Ferguson, Montez Sweat, O'Shane Zaminas, even, gosh, you run through the whole crew, really good. And then the offensive line, I think when we were going through the board back in November with the teams that I called 17 teams and went through the positions. I think the league's most fired up about the offensive line group.
Jim, to put it nicely, the weather's looking a little dicey Wednesday.
I don't care. Saturday looks really good. So I care about Saturday. Yes, we've contacted the people out at South Alabama, and we're going to go out and use their indoor. And what we've told the league, told the teams is we're going to go out there with the coaching staffs. They're going to video it. The NFL is going to have to stay behind because they're building the stadium out there. It's ripped up, parking, and again, there's no. It's a uncovered indoor. So there's in terms of having people around the field, it just wouldn't work. And I don't think the network would be able to get out there. So, but we would get a good practice, on video for the 32 teams, and that's really all they care about.
Jim, from where you are today, from the very first day you took the job, what's the single biggest thing that surprised you or maybe took you aback?
The stadium issue here locally that I had to go through over the summer. But no, just the enormity of the job, really. Even living down here, it's a big job here locally, but you don't realize all that goes into it. So even going through the fall, if I could get 2 or 3 good hours of tape in a day, that was a good day. Like I really thought I'd just be able to sit behind my desk and grind tape like I was a scout again, and that didn't happen. So I would say that just there's so much more to the job than I probably thought there was.
Jim, what was the situation with DeAndre Walker? When did you find out that he was
Okay, DeAndre was last Thursday. So we got through Wednesday. I felt really good about it, where things were. We hadn't had many guys drop. I'd heard all these horror stories about guys dropping. And then we had a couple in the morning on Thursday. I was driving around town, got the call from DeAndre's agent. And like these last few days, whenever I see the agent number come up, it hasn't been a good thing so far. I think I'm 0 for 7 in the last 3 days with that. But yeah, I think it was Thursday. But it's a legit thing. Obviously, he missed the bowl game with it. It's a groin, and I don't want to talk more about the specifics of it, but we're disappointed because DeAndre was a guy for me going back in the scouting process last year in Seattle. You're putting on tape last year watching Bellamy and Lorenzo Carter, and to me, 15 should have been playing over both those guys. Every time he was on the field, he was disruptive. If you just did like a per-play disruption, and I didn't go back and do that, but every time the guy stepped on the field, he was making something happen. So I really wanted DeAndre there. I was in Athens in August there was a group of scouts that day. They scrimmaged, and I was busting at the seams, like offering for the Senior Bowl that day. I'm like, guys, I'm offering him right now. So he's the guy that excited me, and I was bummed to lose him.
Jim, who's like a quote-unquote small school guy who you're really excited to see this week?
All of them. I didn't want to force any small school players into the game just for the sake of bringing a small school guy in. I think every guy we're bringing in is going to get drafted and play a long time. Nasir Adderley's an easy one because I think that you guys have gotten on bandwagon of Adderley's. John Kaminsky's another one. I started getting calls on him from friends in the league. So again, kudos to my friends in the league for helping us out, trying to identify some smaller school guys. So again, as our staff, we were going to go to see all the players and all the big schools. So it took those relationships to get us into those, because you won't know about them if we don't have the resources, we don't have the budget to just be on the road and travel every day. So the friends in the league steered me towards him, and when I started getting those calls, it was more, listen, Jim, this isn't a late round guy. This is a guy that could be like a 2nd or 3rd round pick. So then I sent one of our scouting assistants up, Dante, and he came back and he was like, man, we got to get this guy. He's awesome. Kaminsky. Yeah, John Kaminsky. So, but all the way through, I'm really excited about Bruce Anderson, a running back from North Dakota. Yeah, again, running back's a hard position usually for us to fill because a lot of the good ones leave as juniors. And we were going, God, we spent like 3 days just grinding running back after running back, and none of them really did it for me. And we got to Bruce Anderson, and it just, to me, something just popped. Like, this is the guy we got to have. So I'm excited for Bruce, but all these, I don't want to slight anyone. Every single small school guy we're bringing in, I think is a really good player.
What goes into inviting a guy getting promoted from like the East-West game or the NFL table? You got 3 of those guys here.
Yeah, they were. All of them were on the radar, obviously, and they were in the next man up alternate position. And then the great thing was they all played well in the game. So we're not jacking guys up from, down our board. We're staying true to where we had them, but they all performed well, which was great. So it was an easy phone call to make for all those guys, Hills, and we're actually bringing up Jimmy Moreland. I think that's I just did that like an hour ago. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard about that, but we're bringing Jimmy Moreland up to play on the South team at corner.
Is he replacing anybody?
Yeah, John Abram has a shoulder thing. We caught it in the medical. So he's going to stay around during the week, but he's not going to participate.
Jim, what's been your experience with Alabama and Auburn, working with those programs with your guys?
In this role or when I was scouting? The Alabama thing's getting hard. I touched on it the other day when we had our local presser. Just the byproduct of what Coach Saban has built up there, it makes it tough for us. And again, it's hard because this is such a big Alabama market that we obviously want to get those players. But so many, 7 guys already. I think it's been the record, our jumping. So it is getting harder and harder. We obviously want those players. But again, we want to bring in the best players. So I'm not going to force local players or Auburn or Alabama players that don't belong because these rosters are for the NFL. I take that responsibility way too seriously to just bring in guys because they're local or because they're from a state school. We just want to get the best players. That's why I like bringing in Tyree Jackson last week when he came available. Is again like a 9th quarterback, sounds like a lot, but again he's a 3rd, 4th round type guy. Just got to do it.
Obviously, Philip Lindsay wasn't invited here last year. That's been mentioned. And as a team, I guess I just wondered if that's a name that's been mentioned in hindsight.
Well, I would have invited him. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Is that a name that's been mentioned in hindsight by your team through the evaluation process?
Well, yeah, I tried to highlight that with our 2 young scouting assistants. Is that's a position where guys we miss on them. Like there's guys that every year. Philip Lindsay was one name I brought up. Chris Carson, who we had when I was in Seattle, who had a 1,000-yard year and is a really good runner. He wasn't in an all-star game, period, I don't believe. And so every year there's those guys. Like that's the one spot. So when we were grinding through all those running backs before we found Bruce Anderson, that was my point. Guys, they're out there. We just have to keep watching the tape. We will find them, but it was a process. Yeah, Philip Lindsay, man, he was awesome last year at the East-West Shrine game. Really, the speed with Alex, that really jumped out at that level. And again, he's a guy, my friends on the West Coast, I mean, that was the one guy that they were calling about was you got to check out this dude at Northern Colorado. So the first thing that you see is the speed and then the hands, and he's tough. And that's a position, too. There's a big drop-off at the small school level at corner from, FCS, from FBS to FCS. So we just want to see him against real guys and see what he can do. I think he'll do great. And he's been, spending time with him the last couple of days. He's a really cool kid, so I think Alex will do great.
Feels like Hunter Renfro's been playing college football forever. What can this week do for a guy like him?
Yeah, Hunter's been fun to watch. He might not be the most popular guy in Mobile this week because he took the title away from the Tide, but he's a really good player. Like I was joking with him, weigh-ins might not be his thing tomorrow. But one-on-ones will be, and that's a lot more important than the weigh-in. He's going to turn people inside out in one-on-one. So, just a great route runner, really good savvy, great hands. His skill set is pretty obvious. I don't think it takes a lot to scout Hunter because he's so consistent. He's so dependable. You know what you're getting. That's why if you're a team drafting him, he's a really easy pick because he's a solid dude. The tape is always the same. And I think that he's got a chance to be a more productive pro than he was college player because the pro game is more conducive to – they just scheme the slots better. I mean, the pros use the slot receiver position better than colleges do. So, and again, they had so many weapons at Clemson. I think Hunter could be a really productive slot player.
Jim, you talked about Marquise Blair a little bit. What did you see from him on tape? Because I know the box score was crazy, but you saw stuff from him on tape that made you think he could be a really good pro.
Love that guy. He's one of my favorite guys. Just the acceleration and the willingness to run and hit and just knock people out. He is exactly coming from Seattle. Like that guy's a Seahawk safety right there. I mean, He'll run alleys. He'll light you up. He's really fast. He's long. I think he might be able to play corner because he is long and he can run. I love his play style. I love his tempo. I love his temperament. I know he got kicked out of ejected out of a couple games, but, I'd rather try to dial that back than try. You can't coach what he has. You can't coach that into a player. So, I love Marquise Blair.
Jim, what are some of your early memories of Brian Flores and your thoughts on him, like being the next office coach?
Yeah, that's all transparency. He's one of my favorite people I've ever worked with or ever been around in my life. He is so. I could go on and on. I love Brian Flores. Now he's going to be a great coach. He's he's got a great way about him. He connects with all different kinds of people. He's up there. He was in scouting for us when I was in New England. That's where we made our connection. So he understands the personnel side of it. He's been a grunt on the personnel side. He's going to be easy to work with for Chris Greer and those guys. And again, that head coach GM relationship is so critical. He gets that. There's no ego with Brian. He's just where he's come from in life. I told my son the other day when word was breaking that Flo was going to get that job, and he's been to our house. He's been around my family, and I said, look at Mr. Brian on what you can do with your life. He doesn't come from a whole lot now, and now he's going to become an NFL head coach. It's pretty remarkable, but he's got a great way with people. He's a great teacher. The players respect him. I think younger coaches nowadays, there's that fine line of being a player's coach and trying to be one of the boys, be one of the guys, and a lot of guys cross that, and they lose respect, and Brian will never cross that line. So I think it's a slam dunk hire for Miami.
Kind of along the same lines, Daryl Bevell with the Lions. What do you think he can do for a guy like Matt Stafford?
I think he's going to play to Daryl's strengths. And when we were in Seattle, he always did that with Russell. He did a great job of scheming Russ to play to his strengths because Russell, great quarterback, but again, play calling sometimes for Russell isn't the easiest thing in terms of getting him out of the pocket and letting him use his strengths. So he'll do that with Matt. He'll do a great job. Yeah, it was great. Daryl's a great guy. If you found someone that couldn't get along with Daryl Bevell, look in the mirror because he's a pretty easy guy to get along with.
Gardner Minshew is obviously a good story, great story how he got here, how he arrived at this point. But what kind of prospect is he? What do you think teams are looking for from him?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Gardner, obviously the background is incredible because it shows the resilience and the mental toughness, and he's bet on himself. He left Troy. He knew he was good enough to play. He saw he wasn't going to play behind Brandon Silvers, so he goes to JUCO. And this guy's constantly betting on himself. He could have, he goes to Washington State. It's not a guarantee. But I think what separates him and what makes him a really interesting player is coming out of that, system up there for Mike Leach. A lot of those guys, the big knock is they're programmed. It's simple read. It's half field. Well, when you watch Gardner play, he sees everything. He's got such a good feel for the quarterback position that being down here, he's a guy that in the game, to me, he's a guy that could be the game MVP. He'll get in this game and just operate because he just knows how to play quarterback. His vision's great, really accurate. He's a gamer. You can see it from the time he's walked in the building here. He's just got something about him. I told the two coaches today, we were talking about the quarterback group, I'm like, wait till you get around this Minshew kid. He's got something. So he's a cool player. Yeah.
How does that kind of transition feel, you think, to guys at the next level?
He was so much fun to watch, just in terms of being able to get out and pull and move and play in space. He's good. Zone blocking teams are going to love that guy. His ability to do the initial quickness is off the charts. I remember just him reaching 3 techniques and stuff. He makes it look so easy. So he was another guy. There has been some players where you really got to grind through some tape to really get a feel where Garrett Bradbury kind of jumped right out, what his skill set was and what he was good at. And then digging in, I didn't realize he wasn't a lineman the whole time because he's got really nice feel. He takes great angles. He sees things really well. I think he's a center only. Even getting him here, he's not the biggest guy in the world. And that would really hurt him if he were projecting as a backup. But someone's gonna draft that guy to be their starter.
Jim, we've seen a lot of years where guys improve their stock dramatically in the Senior Bowl pass. A guy like Jonathan Ledbetter, what's the upside for him? Why was he on your early list in
Yeah, the upside to John Ledbetter is he loves football, and that's the upside because it jumped out last year when I was in Athens watching that kid practice. I put something out on Twitter this fall about it. I mean, he's so combative. He plays hard. I mean, he jumps out on the practice field at Georgia, and they, Kirby and those guys really coach those guys hard. So it's not like he's a place where there's not good effort, and he still stood out. So he's versatile. I think he came into the year this year a little heavy. I don't, that's just my take. I thought he looked a little heavy early in the year, and then as the course of the year went on, like mid-October, November, getting into the Florida game and some of those games, I mean, he was really hard to block. So a movable guy, can play in any system. You can move him up and down the line. He's got heavy hands. He plays hard. He chases. So I think he can fit with anyone. He's a really interesting guy, too.
Jim, do you think Dalton Reisner is better at center or attack?
I would say center. Yeah, but that's what this week's about. So we'll kind of see. I think he can play guard too. But that's the appealing thing about Dalton is that I really think he could play 4 of the 5 spots. I don't really see him as a left tackle, but I think you can move him all the way across and play 4 spots. And I mean, gosh, the guy's intangibles are off the charts, and he's played 1 million games. That's what I think the league is interested about with this position group is they're all blue-collar, tough guys. They're the kind of guys that play in the NFL. They've had 1 million snaps and 1 million starts at big schools. So he kind of fits the mold what the league's looking for.
It might be tough to choose, but of all the guys in the crop, who's your favorite story in terms of their journey to this?
The Minshew one's really good. They all, and that's the rewarding part about scouting, is that's really the thing I miss most about being on the road is hearing that stuff. Like I've heard it secondhand, but not being upstairs and talking to these guys about where they came from. That's the good stuff. That's why guys become real NFL players. It's not like I say it all the time. The tape's the easy part. Once you've scouted a long time, it's figuring out the guy, and those are sitting down man to man and hearing where a guy came from. God, there's so many of them. Caleb McGarry's story is incredible. Minshew, but again, I think when you get to this level of football, I mean, most of these guys have been through something. And that was one thing that we really hammered in Seattle was finding the guys that have been through adversity, because it's not going to be easy. The NFL is not an easy league. You're going to go through stuff. So finding the guys that have really gutted through and had some grit to them, and you're going up and down this roster, I'm sure there's, a bunch of guys.
Does this week mean more to a player like Emmanuel Hall who's flashing good ability, who's had some injuries at Mizzou along the way? Is there something to it where you can sort of have a big week and maybe answer some of the questions from that?
It would have been a big for Emmanuel, but he's not coming.
Okay.
Yeah, he called me on Thursday.
Did any teams do any of the offensive linemen first round balance that we talked to?
Yeah, because when we talked about the guys at the top of the board, it was more I'd already invited 60 guys when I made those calls. So really, I identified that priority group that we really wanted here, and I don't want to come off a certain way, but we knew we wanted those guys. So it was more like when we made the call, okay, here's who we've already invited, and we didn't go into where do you have this guy, but I think Andre Dillard's going to be a huge name out of this week. At left tackle, he jumps off the tape when you watch Minshew. I wasn't even really, I had no preparation for Andre Dillard when I put on that Wazoo tape. I think he's going to be a legit left tackle, could get in the first round. Michael Dieter from Wisconsin, I think, is going to be in that conversation. So it's just such a great group. But those were 2 names that kind of right now pop in my head that could do it.
What's the most important part of this week for the players?
That's a good question. I think I stress to them in the orientation, the whole week's important. Like every part of it's important, but in their eyes, like in terms of the league value, where you're making your money is probably the one-on-ones. But also, I mean, the interviews are critical, and again, all you have to do, I've impressed upon them. You just connect with the right person. So don't go up to your room. I know you're tired. It's a long week. And you want to get a nap or something, but stay down here. Like if you connect with that one person, he might be the guy that's going back and pounding his fist on the table for you and jumping another guy at your position group. And there's a huge dollar value attached to that. So the interviews and also the game. I think that there's a fallacy out there that it's just the week. It's just the practice week in the game. Who cares about the game? Well, I told the players, like Marcus Davenport, to me, he wasn't great all week last year. He was really good in the game. You know, he had a good week. He didn't have a great week, but he had a really good game. And then certain positions like Rashad Penny last year, running backs are really hard to evaluate down here other than pass pro and in the pass game. But the run stuff, we don't take him to the ground, so running back's critical. The quarterback, Josh Allen, you know, like he got better every day last year, but he peaked in that game. Kyle Lauletta, so the game can be really big as well. But yeah, it's just, you know, it's just a big week to connect and get comfortable in the whole pre-draft process. You know, I think the guys that just get thrown into the combine, and that thing's even way bigger than this in terms of the scope and Indianapolis and the city, I think they can, you know, it can overwhelm those guys. So this kind of eases them in. But it's the whole process is big.
What value do teams attach to a quarterback like Drew Lock starting for 4 years and a program kind of being the face of something for a long time?
Yeah, I think you're always looking, you know, it goes back to the whole Parcells thing where you want the certain number of starts, but experience matters. It really does. It's just not a developmental league at any position anymore. So you can't get snaps. You're going to get thrust right in. You got to be ready to play. And I think that when you are the face of a program, you're ready to handle some of that stuff. I know Drew's coming up here to talk, but it's a great question for him. But I think that those guys are more ready for all the stuff coming at them and being the guy. But again, live reps at quarterback is so critical. That's why I really hope, you know, where Phil Savage is with the AAF and XF, I hope those leagues take off because the quarterback position really needs it.
2 more questions?
How early did the first invites go out?
When did we put them out? Late November? Mid-November? Probably mid-November. Probably like November, probably that first week in November. Because I think 60 were out when I made my calls to the teams around Thanksgiving. So, yeah, early November.
Jim, I did hear you mention on the Draft Network podcast that running back's been difficult to kind of invite just because so many are leaving as juniors.
Right.
There has been some juniors here over the past few years. So what's kind of the thought process if and when it's appropriate to try to invite some of those juniors?
I think it's appropriate if they're good enough. You know, I think that if, you know, that rule was put in place a few years ago, I think 2012, Rob. And so we've got 11 junior grads coming in. I think that's really beefed up the talent level of our rosters. We really made that a point of emphasis for our staff, and that was the value of having a staff full of NFL scouts, because we had a network of guys at schools and other scouts on the road where you can call an academic person or you can call another guy on the road, hey, is this guy graduating? I don't know how many agents called me about guys, yeah, I've got a junior, he's going to graduate. And then you call the academic person and they're like, no, he's not graduating. So, you know, we did. We had to prepare for it because we had roster spots saved for about 15 guys. And because we didn't want to get to January and have 110 guys invited, and then juniors like Anthony Nelson from Iowa is a perfect example. That's a guy we didn't know about. We were not prepared for him. I told him that today, and thank God we had a roster. Tyree Jackson is another guy. We didn't really have a roster spot for him, but we created one. But they have to be good enough. You know, if they've worked so hard, if they've graduated and got their diploma, what else are they there for? You know, that's why you go to school. Why should they be penalized for being a junior when they've got their diploma in hand? So I think that's one area for our game this year. You'll see it. All these juniors we're bringing up, these guys are legit. I mean, we're not just bringing in juniors to say we're bringing in juniors. Like, all these guys are getting drafted. They're all going to play. The league's fired up to see them because they're a little behind in the process with these juniors. So it's a great group.